Hi guys. I wanted to talk a little bit about today of like why you matter even and especially when you suck at life. So, there's this thing that's happening right now where people are practicing being vulnerable online about their life, like what's truly happening beyond just perfect Instagram filters. People are talking about inflation, how they're struggling to feed their families and keep a roof over their head. And this is a crazy phenomenon to me because I'm used to, again, like when you go to places like Instagram, let Instagram tell it there is nothing wrong in the world. Everybody's rich. There's no problems. But when you head over to places like TikTok, YouTube, sometimes people are starting to tell it like it is. And I think this is so healing. And also, it's very important to be aware of what's really going on with people in their lives and to remember what matters at the core of things right now. So often, like, I feel like we should know better by now since the pandemic has shown us that everything is so fragile. But what I noticed is this huge want to get back to normality since the pandemic. And what I mean is people wanting to portray this idea of what a perfect life is, whether that's materialism, status, having a perfect life, and things like that. And for me, being a spiritual practitioner, time and time and again, we're shown that that doesn't always give us soul purpose. And so I love when the veil is being torn off of our eyes all the time and showing us the truth of what life really is. That certain things just aren't sustainable, it's not fulfilling, and it's making us look at life and seeing like what else is possible. But I still feel like we haven't gotten to the point where people are wanting to think of what else and what's next because we're so used to like the evil that we know, as opposed to like saying what it is and being uncomfortable with the truth and seeing how we can move forward. So right now, a lot of people are like talking about there's open dialogue of not having a perfect life pretty much, but just posting videos about it isn't enough. And rightfully so, but I do think it all plays a part because first, self-awareness is a huge thing, collective awareness is a huge thing. And something that I always preach to people is that it is so important to be worldly as a person, to know what's going on around the world. I know people say the news is evil and bad. Of course, you want to be mindful of your resources and stuff like that, your sources, but it's so important to know the world around you, because to know yourself is to know others and vice versa. And you want to just know what's going on in the world. But yeah, I think my own opinion about like what's happening, I've been a hippie and nomadic for like 6+ years. So I've been homeless on purpose. But the thought of even changing my life, my circumstances, is even more daunting, seeing these videos of people saying that they're having a hard time in their regular everyday lives. And it's so sad. And I've been reading a lot of articles that saying we don't have enough teachers anymore. Teachers are quitting because they're not paid enough. They're thinking about cutting schools to shorter hours instead of paying them more. But we have money for war. We have money for police, we have money for all these different things, but we don't have for teachers, which is super important. Florida and all these different places are going backwards with education. So it's a wild time to be in. It's like, when I think of America, though I'm in Mexico right now, and I think of America, I think of just collective upheaval all the time. Like, there's no time where you can be comfortable. Like, anyone who says they sleep comfortable at night in America, it concerns me. Not to mention the ongoing issues that I've touched about with suicide awareness, school shootings. It's not a place where people, and then when you have a huge wage gap, rich people are probably worrying about all the time getting robbed. And there was a reader that I was watching on YouTube, and she was saying that her prediction is like more robberies and all this stuff and collective upheaval and basically corruption. And I'm like, yeah, it sounds about right. It's like we don't learn our lesson, and the powers that be or whatnot, they're more concerned about chaos than it is about the comfort of humanity. And so what do we do then? And there's still people who believe that being patient and voting is the way to go. But is it really? I just feel like we're always not fed up enough, or we're still afraid to see what's next or understand what it really takes to have real effective change. Of course, it all matters, even the little small bits that we don't think are effective, but it's just food for thought today. And I wanted to further reiterate, your life still matters even when you aren't doing great. Like, we have to remember to the core of who we are. Like, before, like, people are bringing keywords like work-life balance. They're understanding that hustle isn't everything. I'm practicing showing you how I live. Like, a lot of people that I read for are like 50-year-olds who had the perfect life. They quit, sell everything, and they start traveling like this. Like, old people come through here. Like, people are living, they're understanding that this concept of what they're taught to be happy is not it. And so I want to be vulnerable too. And I used to be like, oh, I don't have this perfect life. But then showing people like how, like, being vulnerable basically, I think is ideal, instead of everyone pretending like everything's like the same or okay, or there's so many different life paths and so much to learn and come from it. But we have to remember that, like, we are enough. Like, our essence, our energy, our soul, we are enough without all these systematic things defining us. So money, status, all these things. If we cannot be okay with ourselves, even if we had all these things, it would not fix us. It wouldn't change anything. And so again, that's why you have so many people in my mind who are suicidal, whether they're rich, poor, middle class, whatever the case may be. If we cannot figure out how to be okay with ourselves, the most challenging thing for myself that I realized in my travels, in my spirituality, in my own practices and self-awareness is, if we can't be okay with ourselves, then we have nothing. And that's one of the challenging things that I'm always faced with every day, is like, am I good with myself? Even when I'm imperfect, even when I like feel like, I'm not digestible, even when I feel like I'm flawed, how can I get to a space that I'm okay with myself? And it's tricky because we always want outside approval. And the reason why I'm bringing this video up today is because so many people need approval of, like, you know, how does everyone think of me? And that's always going to constantly throw you off balance. And what's most important, more than anything in the world, is that, like, just self-acceptance and the fact that you allow yourself to take up space as you are, because we need more of that in the world. That in itself is healing. And I think we haven't been we underestimate just how much we affect the collective by being ourselves, because we have all this stuff covering us and people telling us what's something else. And so it's really important that I remind you guys today that you matter, even when you think you're a loser, even when you think you don't have shit going on. Like, don't let people tell you that you're nothing. It takes a lot. Like, even me being like a self-proclaimed hippie or whatever, there's so much stigma that comes around that, like, oh, you do drugs, oh, you're a bum, oh, you're not aiming for something in life, for example. So if you let these things get to you, you have to constantly learn to define your life for yourself. And it takes strength, it takes practice, it takes courage. No one's saying that it's easy. But if you want a fighting chance to even like, if what keeps you alive every day is doing what you feel pulled to do, your passions, it's better that than trying to confine yourself to societal expectations, which is getting harder and harder to understand because we live in chaotic times. As much as, again, we have this idea of normality and wanting to find balance and get back to normal, there's nothing normal about a whole generation that cannot afford housing and can barely support themselves on full-time jobs. So it's just something to think about, and I would love to hear what you guys have to say.